Well, so it's 1/2 and it is 12:30 Glasgow time. So I'm here to welcome you all for this fine workshop on Eternalize DBs, Eternalize databases. This is supposed to be a follow-up workshop for a workshop me and some colleagues held last year in autumn. It was a virtual workshop like this one at Stuttgart, and now we are at Glasgow, and I would have loved to come in person. And yeah, I am sad both about the decease of Queen Elizabeth and also about not being at Glasgow. How is the weather down there? It's sunny over here, and I hope you are having a good time. I hope you're not too hungry yet, and I would love to have this workshop in the most collaborative way. So the first thing I'd like to check is, how can people interact? How many people are there in the room actually at the Glasgow Convention Center? You might be able to answer via the chat, or I can give you access to your mics as well, I guess. I don't know how this, oh, you can do it yourself, as I see. Like Danny, Stephen, you opened your mics, right? And this crowd seems to be really big. That's great news. Actually, this is supposed to be collaborative, so anything I can offer you is just a glimpse at the work we've been doing so far. And after that, I'd like to engage you all with reflections on how we can continue on this issue. And this issue has been identified at our place because we are responsible for archiving database content, but we don't really have efficient ways to making sure that we do it efficiently. The means we have are tied to special database management systems like Oracle, MySQL, and others. But what we would like to see is a world where as many people as possible agree on ways of doing it in formats that have a certain perspective of surviving for longer, like PDFA for documents, for example. We've tried to explore the whole landscape around database preservation during a workshop, which is documented, and you can actually look into the collaborative notes for this workshop to find the hyperlinks to the documentation of that workshop, and that's the starting point. In the first place, I think we need to have a common understanding of the stuff we know so far. The stuff we know so far is there are initiatives for standardization of database content for the long term, especially the so-called CYARD format. But there are so far no industry agreements on that. It might be related to the fact that most of the time database content is to transfer database content from one database management system to another is not really difficult. You just transfer it, right? From an Oracle database to a MariaDB or whatever. But this needs specialized software, this needs money and investment, and the case that database content is simply resting somewhere and has to be revived is not covered by these methods. Well, if any one of you has the opportunity to speak out on their experience on it, I'd be glad. Also, I once again point to the collaborative notes. If you have joined later, then I might have to repeat the collaborative notes link in the chat. I'll do that. And for the most part of this workshop, what I was planning to do is to encourage you to reflect on the problem of not having like an eternal database format through 6 perspective. The method's called the 6 thinking hats. And you just put on whatever hat you want to put on and talk about feelings you have around this endeavor to ensure eternal survival of databases. You might also want to focus on facts relating to this endeavor. You might want to express cautions you have around that. You might also think about the process on how we can establish firm grounds on this issue. Then think about benefits, and then also make use of your creativity. And I can see people on the collaborative notes already. So you should be able to talk about it. You open your mic. Sorry, is that Honghu? Hi. I think I have to close your mic. Just a minute. There should be ways of doing that. Right. Sorry, Honghu. It's been a mistake that your mic was open, I guess. So for this moment, I'll just reflect on some of the findings we had during the workshop, right? So I will now show the proceedings that only appeared last month, and have a look at some important pictures we gathered during our workshop. This is just a cutout of a large genealogy of relational database management systems invented so far. Mrs. Young, Thelma, I see. I put out the mic. If you look at that, you can see there's been a whole deluge of inventions made during the history of database technology. And it cannot be our aim to cover all these different database management systems. We have to concentrate on the most common ones if we want to ensure survival of the database content gathered so far. And the important thing I always stressed when I was working on the issue was have a look on cost. And the cost to preserve database content is fairly low, comparing it to, say, audiovisual collections, because the amount of data you have to preserve is not really big compared to preserving images and sound. But in my view, it is rather difficult to adapt to all these changes, these innovations in database technology. So I made a forecast on how ways of preserving database content will develop if you look at COAST. And if you look at XML data, it is a fairly cheap solution to do it. If you'd work on disk images and trying to preserve not only the database, but rather the database management system and the graphical user interfaces and all that, your COAST might triple or even be 4 times larger than COAST you'd have just by preserving XML. We had presenters from many parts of the world, some of who are also with us today, as I can see in the participants list. And we all agreed there's loads of questions. There might be a way of preserving database through emulation. There might be ways of agreeing with all the memory institutions worldwide on a format like ZARD. There might also be ways of inducing industry to gather firm ground for a real standard that encompasses, say, areas as different as nuclear energy, chemistry, social sciences, economy, banking, and the vision, in my view, should be to have all of these people gather their data in a common format. And there's one strand of development that might be a source for this initiative, and that's DNA storage. If you look at this slide, actually the Danish colleagues are already doing it. It is just a proof of concept, but they, together with a European research institution, encoded a database of 12.5 megabytes into a DNA strand, and they actually made a proof that you could extract the whole 12.5 megabytes of data from this DNA again. Why is DNA storage maybe a part of the solution? It is a part of the solution because storage on DNA means having your data in a salt dispenser. And every time you make your data available for rereading, you pour some grains of your DNA into a reading device and they're getting wet. So what we really have to keep in mind is that DNA encoded data is completely unstructured in this way that you have to find the beginning and the end of all these objects encoded in the DNA. And this is kind of forcing industry into the need to be very explicit about what is in this data strand. My colleague Raja Apuswamy, who joined us at the workshop in October last year, he said, we need bootstrap routines. We need routines on how processes can pull them out on their own bootstraps. and get to life. So DNA was something that we were discussing on, and it's an iPres issue as well, as you might know. We'll have that in other sessions later on. There have been people from the automotive industry saying that these fine screwdrivers are generating data at giant rates, and that this data has to be stored for about 10 to 15, maybe 25 years, and they might also be interested in establishing firm ground regarding standards. We had further presentations on emulation, on how this can be done. It is safely an iPres subject as well. You will find sessions on easy in your iPres program. And what else is interesting? It's all been interesting, but I'd like to see questions if anybody dares to ask them. To have a really collaborative thing. I will move to the table of contents for the proceedings in order to engage you. What I want to point out that this workshop was supposed to be held with my colleague, Kevin McMahon. Kevin couldn't make it to this conference because another conference was blocking it. So he apologizes for not being here. And it's only two guys. We are not really eager to set up a research program. We've only started a discussion about it, and it would be lovely if people in this workshop feel motivated, want to join us, maybe even want to take over initiative. We're not keen on pursuing this. We just thought that maybe presenting it at iPres would mean that iPres gets a place where this has a firm position and where we can continue discussing database archival. So that's my role. I just wanted to introduce it to you all, and then we will find out if the iPres community can continue on this. So that's one thing I'd like to point out before we get to discussing. You might have to kind of ask for permission to open your mics, but someone actually opened theirs, like Krista Ackerman. Your mic's open, now it's closed again. This works fine, but you're kind of timid, right? I'd like to ask James Doig, did I forget anything we experienced during the workshop, James?
No, Kai, I think you've explained it all very well. And yeah, it was a fascinating couple of days. I was only there for the second day. At my organisation, National Archives of Australia, I suppose we came from a fairly low base, and that up until this point, our approach to database preservation has pretty much been transferring CSV files, flat denormalized CSV files from government agencies. But we did have a project a short time ago to have a look at other approaches where we looked at CARD, which was quite positive, and it ticks all of the digital preservation boxes and being an open, fully specified, structured data format. But a big issue we have in the Australian government are the sort of federal rules around cybersecurity and the problems that we would have in getting government agencies to use open source tools, you know, like the database preservation toolkits and the other tool created by the Swiss Federal Archives that create CIAD files. That's a big barrier to us. And government agencies would have to go through a whitelisting process for that software in order to use it internally. And for a lot of databases that contain sensitive or classified information, and there's a lot of that, it would be quite a difficult thing to getting, you know, the software tools rolled out more generally. That doesn't say we can't do it. If there's enough push within the National Archives or even within Australia to use those tools, then that would create a certain momentum, I guess, within government. The only other organisation I know within Australia who use CIAD and have and support it is Public Records Office Victoria. So yeah, there's a few issues there, but CIAD, as you've mentioned, isn't the only option, is it, for database preservation? There's quite a few other approaches and solutions out there, particularly in Europe, where they seem to have been doing this for a long time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for informing us on your experience. And I've got a reaction on the chat from Lars Arvik. Lars, are you able to activate your mic? Would you like to point it out yourself?
Yeah, absolutely no problem. I was basically just saying that what James said sounded quite similar to the problems we had with getting governmental agencies to actually run. We used, for example, the database preservation toolkit, but we also tried out Spectrum Core to make CIAD, like a CIAD dump of the databases. And it was a bit of an uphill battle, especially for one of the more secretive of the governmental institutions. But we kind of got there in the end, and I think I was just rehashing what James said. This is in a previous job, so it's not in my current job.
I see. Thanks. So if I'm right, it would be fairly easier if Oracle or DB2 or any of the major database management system manufacturers would just enable export to our format of choice. But our format of choice seems not yet to have been established, as far as I can see.
Yeah, and I was also wondering about, because I haven't actually been to the previous workshop on this, so I kind of just got chucked into this. Has there been any work done with like NoSQL databases? Because most has been oriented towards the SQL databases.
Right. Well, in ways, I think preserving those NoSQL databases might be easier or even more difficult. I cannot really tell. As far as I know, they are vector based, right? And you would just have to establish formats for all these relational expressions, right? Object does subject. No, subject does object. It's all simple sentences. But I have not seen anybody saying, well, there's a solution around there. It all seems to be really proprietary. Like you've got RDFs and there's whole ecosystems built around resource description frameworks, RDFs. But there might be other ecosystems oriented towards totally different methods and constructions. So we didn't receive any real answers on that, only perspectives. I would, if nobody's got any questions, I would like to do some living statistics. You should have a reactions option in Zoom at least. We cannot tell how the people who are really at Glasgow right now will react. There might be ways of for you to interact with us as well. You could kind of type something into the chat if there's means for doing that. But I'd like those who have already been planning database archival to raise their hands, if that is possible, in Zoom, or maybe use your thumb. I've seen that Lars has been working on that, James has been working on that, I've been working on that. All the rest of you, not? Okay. Well, maybe it has been about research data archival in a larger sense. Andy Waugh and Krista Ackermann have actually reacted. Would you like to tell us about your work?
Yeah, hi, Krista here. I actually came late, so I didn't hear the introduction, so sorry about that. But I'm from the Swiss Federal Archive, so obviously we use CIARD quite a bit, and we do have stuff that is archived in CIARD. I've been doing that for I think 10 years now or so.
Mm-hmm. May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Krista, you said you've been using CIARD in the last 2 years. CIARD has been kind of invented in Switzerland, and
Yeah.
would you say that there might be older CIARD archival objects at the Swiss National Archives, or did you only just begin in the 20s, like in the last 2 years?
No, I think I said about 10 years, not 2 years.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't get that. So
okay, so yeah, we do.
Clear. Thank you.
Yeah, we have prototype CIARD files, and then we have CIARD 1.0, CIARD 2.0, CIARD 2.1. We all have it next to each other at the moment. So we are trying to get at least the prototype CIARDs into standard CIARD files, but mostly we're just letting them sit there for the moment.
I see. For the collaborative notes, I've just noted that that you use it since about 2010. So as you said, 10 years, right?
I'm not quite sure when we actually started, because I've only arrived at the Swiss Federal Archives 5 years ago, so, but it's definitely already in use then.
All right, yeah. I can invite you to kind of validate that date, that year, if you like.
Okay.
And Andrew Waugh, where are you from? Did I pronounce your name correctly? My name, by the way, my name is pronounced Kai Naumann.
You actually pronounced my name perfectly correctly.
Andy, we are not really hearing you well.
Sorry, get the microphone down. I wasn't expecting to talk. You actually pronounced my name perfectly correctly. I'm very impressed. I come from the Public Record Office, which James Doig mentioned before. Public Record Office Victoria. So we've done a couple of pilots with CIARD. It wasn't my colleague did it. We haven't found many agencies to actually do this properly yet. We've got, sorry, this is something growing in the background. They don't seem to be terribly keen, and I think that might be the same reason that James identified, that they're a little bit cautious about running non-standard, non-proprietary software basically against their databases. So particularly the big ones. Smaller ones, it's like, oh, we don't care, but we're not so interested in those ones. So we keep trying. The other problem we have is we've only just we've re-implemented our digital archive and we've just brought it back online. So we haven't been doing much for the last year or two. So that was the other reason.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Maybe I can say something about how we get the offices to use CIARD. We have a central IT and they packaged CIARD suite for us. So basically everybody in the government can get it pretty easily installed onto their laptops, and then they can use it. And it's a little bit of a challenge each time we have a new version, but after maybe 3 months or so, usually we have the new version package to get it, and they can use it again. So that's how we go about that, and that helps a lot for our users to accept CIARD. And I think it's actually one of the file formats that is yeah, quite well accepted in our government.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks. That might be an option to kind of address IT security stuff, to have it packaged into the agreed list of software. But, well, Australian colleagues and even Norwegian colleagues had their pain in installing it. But by the time it's inside the agreed software, we have won, right? Haven't we?
I guess maybe it helps that we are the ones who are putting the software out there, so that our IT can't say, well, no, we don't like it. But
yeah, that's right. Yeah. I keep adding ideas and insights under the 6 thinking hats. And you can follow what I'm doing on the collaborative notes. If anyone has turned up during the last minutes, I'll put the collaborative notes on the chat once again. Well, this workshop does not seem to become really busy, so I don't mind if we close earlier. There might be people around in the room where this virtual workshop is being screened. Does anybody of you know how these people can interact with us? I'd like to ask Richard Dunn, our host, on that. Richard may be occupied with other things, so maybe someone else will find out sooner or later. Krista, did you hear anything about the future of SEART? I was hoping that someone from the EU initiative DILSIS and EARC would be around, but I don't see any in the participant list. Did you hear any news about SEART as a European standard?
Well, my colleague who is more involved in this, he's not around at the moment because he was in Prague at the DLM forum.
Right.
He's probably still drinking beer. And I'm not quite sure about as a European standard. All I heard is that the standard 2.2 will soon be released. Or is it already released? We are working on the SEART suite now to update it for 2.2. But that's basically my point of knowledge at the moment.
I see, thank you. And thanks for the information about SEART suite. So SEART suite is still active and you will issue a new release of it.
Yeah, it is currently in testing.
Mm-hmm. Did you, it's just, well, maybe it's around somehow similar to gossip, but as far as I knew, the company who developed SEART suite changed. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. We have a new company who is developing it for us, starting this spring, I think they started.
I see.
Yeah, because before it was just basically one person who was doing it, and now we have a whole company behind it.
Excellent, excellent. The staff's been handed over.
Yeah. So we're
Good
hoping
news.
that there's going to be a good future for SEART suite.
Excellent, thanks.
And we're also working, since we're already talking about gossip, we're working about redesigning the GUI. So hopefully it'll be easier to use and nicer to use soon.
I see. That's great news. Really, it is. Do you plan to kind of partner with this other tool, database preservation toolkit from the Portuguese company Keep?
Not that I know of, no.
I see, thanks. Could you I'd love to know where people come from. I'm seeing very kind of exotic names from my personal perspective as a German. Could you please could you please raise your hand or make a sign via Zoom if you are from Asia? From Asian countries like China, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia. Oh, thank you. Yes, Mrs. Wong. Not that many. Who of you has joined us from the Americas, North and South America? Thank you. Canada. And the rest of us then should be from Europe, right? So if you're from Europe, raise your hand. I'll do it myself. How do I do it? I'm a host, so maybe I'm not getting that. Actually, I don't. Doesn't matter. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Would you would you have joined iPres without this workshop? I'm pretty sure that your answer is yes, right? Because this is just one tiny facet of the whole iPres, but I was wondering if this really attracted you. Andrew, yes. Yeah, thanks for doing it, especially for this. But anyway, this is an exchange, so I will continue to be here to answer your questions. I have seen that people keep appearing. Some of you have not been with us when we started, so I can also repeat stuff that doesn't really matter to me. And the most important thing is that we share what we found out in the workshops of last year, and that we kind of continue this through any means we might have. I was thinking that we kind of should enter also the societal perspective, and maybe kind of board conferences about the civil society, about the society losing its memory. It's like those illnesses that elder people often get, like amnesia, not amnesia. I don't know how it's called in English. Those ailments you have when you're losing memory, when your memory fades away, and we could address this really personal feeling of losing your memory to society as well, to kind of engage people more with it from the feelings way, from the feelings side. Engage with grassroots movement. That would be maybe a way of making it more actionable, what we're trying to do. So I just add engagement with grassroots movement in this collaborative notes. Oh, Mrs. Yam, you are from Africa. I forgot to mention Africa. I'm so sorry. Sorry, really. Are you the only one? As far as I can see from the names, there might be more. Like, yeah, dementia. Yeah, strategies against dementia would be the name. Thank you, Michelle. So I'll just address the feeling of societies, companies suffering dementia. I don't mind if you use the collaborative notes as well. Is there anything in the chat? Oh, Joyce Wong, you've got a question. Nicholas, I will ask us the question, have the major database providers been approached to provide a CSV output? Well, in fact, they actually do, as far as I know. You can produce CSV output from Oracle, from other well-known database management systems, but I'm not sure if this is really a solution because you can only extract one database table at a time. So this is not what we actually want to do. We'd love to extract portions of the database, the stuff we really love to have surviving, and then have them all, like also the code lists and all that. Does that answer your question, Nicholas? And regarding Joyce Wong, I'm not the real CART expert. So anyone deeming themselves more knowledgeable can add. But I would say that yes, CART is only for relational database concepts and not for graph databases.
Yeah, I agree on that one.
All right. Then Andrew Wong, I don't really get your question, Andrew. CART output from commercial database. What kind of commercial database are you thinking about? Right, same question as before, but native CART output from Oracle. Yeah, well, how can we achieve that? This is what this workshop is all about. It is about how can we achieve our aims. What we can tell people is that our job is not about publicizing all data. We have to stress that in the face of authorities, in the face of science. Archiving is not about publicizing everything. I can tell you that I will keep the contact we established with the Southern French research group around Raja Apusmumi, who we met last October, and we want to work with them in the next year on database archival. And if anyone's interested, wants to join, wants to find out what we were discussing, you're invited to ask me later next year around May. And there's another question. Great. I will just add the sentence I only started. So sorry for not being around. And then I'll answer your question, right? Now, Michelle's question. Does this standard, so CART, also preserve a data dictionary of sorts? Right. Maybe once again, I can get help from Krista or others, but it really depends on what is stored inside the database management system. So if this database management system is constructed in a way that the data dictionary is included, in the data, then you have your data dictionary. If your data dictionary is outside the database management system, say in the software logic above the DBMS, then you'd have to print it out or have it added as an XML file or as code, like the Python code or JavaScript code that was used to establish the whole database application. So that would be my answer on that. And Lars answered maybe in the same way.
I would also add that the documentation is very important and part of CR, that it has to be included, because yeah, all of the data is not very useful if we don't know how it was used, what it was used for, and how we can access it.
What we are doing in the government realm is to add the handbooks. The software we are often keen to archive is used very broadly in very many offices throughout the country. And all these people need help on how to work with their software. So there is a validated, up-to-date handbooks, and we often archive the handbooks alongside the database content, so that people can find out how this information was arranged on the graphical user interface.
In practice, what we often notice is that we get databases that are already out of use, and then documentation is very bad. And one of the biggest problems actually is to find people who are able to make a documentation. So we're trying to push forwards and already start thinking about the archival process when new applications are being put in use. So that makes things more interesting. But it's often also very difficult to make archiving an issue when they are just starting to use a new product, because usually that's the last thing that the offices think about.
Yeah, this is often the case, right? Thelma is asking us the question of what is the most reliable yet less costly way of migrating paper-based archives to digital archives. I will try and answer, Thelma. If you look at your budget as an archive, you should see an authority, say the Justice Department or the police or whoever is interested, migrating it themselves, so that the archival cost is zero, but the organization responsible for the data in the first place is doing this transformation. That would be my creative answer on that. Thanks for James. Thanks for pointing to the case studies. I added them to the collaborative notes, the CR case studies. They're a nice source of how you're doing it, right?
Yeah, we did follow the case studies quite closely. The question about data dictionaries, I mean, they're separate when they're separated from the the database logic and so on, and they exist as separate files. We have asked agencies, give us the data dictionary, give us manuals. We've even asked for like screenshots or screencasts of the actual user interface when it was in active use by the government agency, because of course as government, as archivists of government agencies, we want the records in context. Of course, the problem with CR is that you cannot capture the user interfaces, the middleware, any of that sort of thing. You're basically getting the database management system, you know, and the raw data and the things that go with it, like views and triggers and so on. So you're actually missing an awful lot of context that you need to get with through other ways. But it's an excellent point about the documentation. If you can't understand the data, the elements, the metadata elements and their definitions, then it's pointless doing it in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry that you hear my typing, but I don't see any other ways. I have to comment and I have to document. So I hope this is not too annoying for you. Thanks. Yeah, the documentation issue is really big. I was once again getting to how to get it done. How can we engage in a process? And I found a conference on data processing. So that might be an issue as well, that we engage with the IT people, with the IT academia who work on data processing. Because if you do data fusion, if you do research on data, you always have to transfer data, you have to reconfigure data, you have to reconnect data sets that are not supposed to interact. And if you work on that, you might also be interested in learning how to make this easier, to have motorways in time. How can we establish motorways in time? If we spark it, there might be a large building industry who can construct time travel lanes. And this would make time travel more comfortable, right? And easier to establish. If that be a common format that worked in 2020, say, and it still works in 2080. That would be really the vision behind it. So did I miss anything from the chat? I hope not. Elizabeth Long asks us, I'm curious about access solutions that are being either used or envisioned for CRT format records. There are very nice solutions for that. You can actually access CRT databases through the database preservation toolkit from Keep. There's another open source solution that's been constructed at the National Archives of the Republic of Slovenia. And you should be able to find them via the Copter tool grid or the Copter tool registry. I can point you to that as well through the chat and in the collaborative notes. You would just point to the content type, and then you can see all the ways that your content type can be treated. I'll just do that for you. Wait a minute. That's how Copter works. You get to Copter, and then you choose your content type, and there will be a database. And then if this site works correctly, you can go through the whole life cycle of digital objects. And then you can find that access, use, and reuse for database content is really can be done with CRT excerpt, which is new, which I didn't know already. and with DB view from Slovenian National Archives. And I'm pretty sure that also, where is it? Database preservation, DBPTK, could do the job as well. But right now I can't find the database preservation toolkit anyway. Someone should add it to this grid. Lars, thank you. Thank you. Right, that's the DBPTK. What it actually does is set up a web-based query environment so that you can query your data again.